calendar, clock on the wall says 1:00, so, well, no, actually it doesn't, but mine does. Okay, call meeting to order. Any agenda additions? Seeing none, can I get any from the admin?
Mr. Chair, if we could have the Flagstaff County Land Use Model referral.
And under new business of 8.5.
Everybody check if their microphones are on.
Hello.
Check.
Did mine work good?
No.
Ernie, I got you.
Okay. Thank you. Hello?
Hello.
More tundra. It's like the same. It's, yep. Hello? There we go. Technical difficulty.
Alrighty.
One on the side. So 8.5, we're gonna put down under new business, the Flagstaff land use bylaw. Anything else that you have from admin? Anything from the board? I will get a motion. Mr. Clark, to approve the agenda additions and what we have in front of us. All in favor? That's carried. What we'll do right now is we do have one person online, so we'll do quick introductions for anybody else that's watching or listening. And we'll start with Marnie.
Ernie Gender, board member. Kay, board member.
Larry Clark, board member.
Dave Grover, board member.
Justin Stevens, board member.
Les Stillberg, board member.
James Nyberg, chair of the Municipal Planning Commission.
Jill Hoover, legislative assistant.
Rick Teal, director of Planning and Development.
Andrew Burchett, Director of Municipal Services.
Rich Fitzgerald, development officer.
Robin Potter, bylaw officer.
Hey. And any online, who do we have online?
Like the applicant for 6.2.
Okay. We'll go from there. Minute approval from November 23, all last year stuff. Anybody have a perusal of the minutes? Anybody that wants to put them forward? There we go. Thank you, Mr. McKay. No questions, concerns? All those in favor? Mr. Clark, you're in. Favor? Carried. If it pleases the commission, can we go to 6.2? We do have an applicant on the line and page 16 of your package, gentlemen. If that's okay with admin, you're ready to go there?
I will just
Page 16.
point out, if you're following digitally, you're gonna have to do a -2.
Okay,
Or T.
go ahead. It's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of this development permit is to consider a permitted use permit application for an ancillary building, 935 square foot garage, with a variance to allow for the building to be placed in the front yard of the property. Background and discussion. The subject property is located in the Scenic Sand subdivision. The property has a steep slope from back to front, with the principal building, the home, located at the rear of the property. There's a paved driveway located next to the west boundary of the property and appears to meet the county standard. There is a second approach closer to the east boundary where the previous owner stored a boat and trailer, which does not appear to be constructed to any standard. The soil for this property is mostly sand and till.
Okay. Is there typically we get a lot drawing on this, and I don't seem to see it, do I?
It was in with the site plan on the back of the application.
Oh, okay, I gotta go all the way, okay, there we go, there, I found it. And so where are we putting it on the site plan?
That's the dark lined shaded portion.
Oh, I see, okay,
That's it.
and they're calling it a new garage,
Right.
okay. And there is an existing building already, small one?
Just a garden shed that is going to be removed.
Okay, that's the one in the picture,
Right.
okay.
So referral comments, The application was referred out to county staff, and the following comments were received from Public Works staff. Public Works has concern with the second approach to access the proposed ancillary building, citing concerns with snow removal. And if we go to the site photos, you can see the garden shed that's going to be removed. The pavers are going to be removed as well.
We were talking on page 15, is that what you're looking at?
Yes.
Yeah, 15 to 90.
So I believe on page 16, the site photos that were taken show when you're standing at the end of the driveway, the approach where the approach meets the road, it shows you the view east and west.
Those trees will be removed.
That wasn't wasn't added in as conditions. As you can see, both sides of the road, it's grown in fairly well there. But I did add a condition based on what Public Works came back with. I added a condition at the approach. If this is approved, the approach needs to be built to a county standard. We didn't unfortunately have a policy that limits the amount of approaches that a property could have. So understanding what Public Works is saying, but I felt like we didn't have a policy in place to back up for me to say we can't approve that request.
Okay. Questions or concerns? Mr. Gender?
Looking at the picture on page 17, like with the approach, it appears that there is kind of a little rise in the approach. So I'm just kind of wondering, like they are saying that it's very sandy up there, on whether the adjoining properties have, say, like a ditch to continue on. I wouldn't want to just see like a ditch, on each side of this, just with a culvert, and then also on each side going into nothing. That would be no culvert or no approach. I'm just kind of wondering, okay, what's the consistency of, say, like with the adjoining properties?
So there are no culverts in any of the approaches along here, so I'm assuming that Public Works would stick with that theme. But that's up to them to make that judgment. But yeah, none of the approaches along this road have any culverts in them. Most likely due to the soil type. There's no drainage issues here. When it rains, it filters down into the ground pretty quickly. So.
There's like a lot of these, I believe the general county approaches say like with about a 400 mil culvert. So that's about 1.5 feet. And by the time you put any cover over top of it, I just find that if we do have to build an approach, it's not going to be justified. So I'm just kind of wondering whether we can possibly scratch that one out so that they do not have to comply with it.
From my understanding, there's no actual requirement. That's recommended in 90% of the applications that we look at, that they put that 400 mil culvert in. But in a situation like here where there are no other culverts, there's no, defined ditch there for the water to flow through, it probably wouldn't be a requirement. I think I'd be surprised if they would add that in there.
So I think what we could do is to help your concern, Mr. Gender, is if we change the condition to state to the satisfaction of the county's Public Works Department.
Okay.
And I think that would solve the issue of us. It does become ambiguous, but if they're willing to sign off and they're saying that it's satisfactory and they have what they want, whether it's a culvert or not a culvert, let them make the determination. And I think I hear what you're trying to say there. Okay. So that is something we can do? Okay. Okay, go ahead.
The other part is, say, like on the very first page 14, number 2, like it just says that the property has a steep slope to front with the principal building. So I'm just kind of wondering, is this garage going to be impeding within that slope, or is it on this side of it?
No, actually, if you see the photo with the garden shed and the pavers, it's very flat right there. The steep slope starts a little farther back up the property, up towards where the house is. So, but this portion of the property is pretty much flat.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. Does that satisfy your concerns? Rich, you had something else to add?
So in the opinion of the Development Authority, the proposed application for an ancillary building meets the requirements for permitted use in the resort residential district, and it meets all the minimum setback distances from the boundaries. Therefore, the Development Authority recommends approving the application DP 23001 Bashan with a variance to allow placement for the ancillary building in the front yard, subject to the conditions.
I will make the motion that we approve this with staff recommendations, as well as the added one regarding the approach and drainage thereof to the satisfaction of public works.
And Mr. or Mrs. Sean, I'm not sure who's online. Is there any comment you would like to make? Typically, we'd like to hear if there's anything from you.
No, I'm happy with that. I just want to make sure, so that we don't know if we're going to put a culvert in or we may not put a culvert in. Is that what it is?
Yeah, you can just check with our public works and they'll basically have a site meeting with you and then be able to determine what the best course of action is.
Okay, no, thank you. That's more than that. Basically, the garage is going to be sitting right on that pad. So that's what we're doing. We don't
Lost him.
want to take down any trees.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. The way the picture looked like to get access in, you would need to knock down a couple of trees, but that's fair enough. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table with the one change to have the approach built to the satisfaction of the county's public works. Any questions, concern? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried. Okay, let's go back up to the development officer's report, page 3 then.
Chairman, we do have someone else on the line.
Okay.
I think that is related to another application.
Subdivision.
Which subdivision?
Yep, 2022-14, the middle one.
Okay.
7.2.
Okay. Okay, so we'll, as normally we do, we'll have no issues, concerns going to 7.2. I'm seeing nodding from the board, so we will go to 7.2 if Amin's ready for that. Are you? Okay, I see the nodding from Amin. Yes, so we'll go to 7.2, page 49.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So this proposed application is to take an existing lot in the Buffalo Sands subdivision and divide it to give half to the neighboring property on one side and half on the other. So on the sketch that you can see, the existing parcel that is being subdivided is the one with the solid purple-pink outline right in the middle. And then the more pink mauve dashed lines are what would be the result. The two larger parcels on either side becoming larger by taking half of that lot in the middle. Meets the land use bylaw, meets the MDP requirements. The one issue around the land use bylaw, which is note the relaxation on the maximum size of parcels. Staff are recommending that the relaxations be granted given the kind of the unique setting going around the elbow of this particular street. Ordinarily, when you look down the streetscape and you try to look at the character, you try to have similar sized parcels in terms of the overall size and width. And in this particular case, we don't think that would be terribly noticeable if these two parcels in this going around the elbow get larger. It won't detract from the streetscape in that perspective. That's why the administration is prepared to recommend and support those relaxations. The other of note comment or item on this particular application is the fact that the middle lot does have existing water and sewer service connections. That one is a little bit new for us in terms of having to deal with service connections that are no longer going to be needed because the parcel in the middle is disappearing and the ones on either side already have service connections that are in use. And that leads to a condition that, to the satisfaction of the county's public works staff or operations staff, those service connections have to be disconnected in an appropriate manner so we don't get cross-contamination or contamination of the water supply system, or we don't have basically sewage coming out of the service connection we're not using. Beyond that, the conditions that you find at the back of the report are pretty standard. There's no allowances, taxes, use of the surveyor's is a suitable instrument that's susceptible to land titles to actually affect the subdivision. The requirement that you have to actually add the middle pieces of the middle lot to the other two parcels. And also a contribution to the Rural Development Fund, which in this particular case, we're not expanding the parcels, but there is the base fee of $50 a parcel for that. With that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
I just have the one question on that. When we're asking that water and sewer and the disconnection or at the cost of the developer?
It is at the cost of the applicant. So in terms of how we envision that happening, they are well advisable to touch base with the utilities, our utility operators. I'm getting his title incorrect, I'm sure. And go over that before hiring a contractor to go and make the changes. And there will be an expectation for some follow-up inspections before things get buried to confirm that it actually has been appropriately cut off to the county's satisfaction.
Okay.
Mr. Gender.
To that point there, okay, we've got another point coming on here today of where there was some land subdivided off a number of years ago. Now it's going to be re-amalgamated. So now if we look at this part here, is there ever going to be a possibility that this could be split off and made into another lot sometime down the future? So I would look more to say like with these two services, that they are severed below ground and then have some, say like a butt fusion connections onto those so that there isn't any possibility. That would be like one concern I have. The other is, okay, with the surveying on here, I'm not really sure whether there's been any indication showing like who's going to be picking up the survey on this to build it, who's going to be picking up the cost.
Mr. Chair, the applicant always picks up the cost for creating their own plans of survey and instruments for registration. We do not do that for them. That comes into us for review and sign off before they can take it on to land titles. In terms of the cap, I'm going to still defer to the utility operators on what's best. We don't know how long that service connection or disconnection may have to last. If at a future date, the two property owners that would now own the large parcels get together and decide, yeah, we'd like to re-subdivide and go back to 3, they'll bear the cost of reinstating the service connection.
Okay with you? Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
The diagram that's on the screen right now, did that middle, or the landowner to our right, when you're looking at the screen, did he own that lot before? Or how, like, doesn't it look like aren't they over boundary?
So when you look at this, the air photo, and we're down to trying to find that last 5 feet between shadows and not perfectly getting survey drawings matched up with the air photo, you can see that happen. So I would never, and when you see a parcel boundary right flush against a building like that, unless it's clearly right through the middle of the roof, it's just the level of error that we see in the drawings.
Yeah, because, well, the one almost looks like it's on the roof, doesn't it?
Yeah, for the RV that's further up, yeah.
The top is a trailer park there.
Okay.
Looks like it's over. So.
And what's behind it then? What's that dark area? Shadow. Shadow from the other.
From the house.
Oh, okay, okay.
And then I think there's a trampoline a little further down.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, can I get a motion? Mr. Stevens?
I will give the motion that we approve the subdivision with staff recommendations.
Any other questions or concerns? Oh, thank you. Judy Hilker, did I get that right, Judy? Is there anything that you would like to comment on?
We will be engaging with Bemico Surveys to get it all done correctly once this has all been approved. We did engage their services to do the initial drawings based on just waiting to find out if this application will be approved or not. If it gets approved, we will be engaging their services to do this legally. So they'll be the ones submitting all the applications and going to land titles.
Perfect. Okay. There we go. So at that, I will ask the question. Are there any questions, concerns? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Judy, you can go talk to Amico.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right, thank you. Okay, now we will go back to the director's report and start at the very beginning again. Back to the future. Page 3.
I think I'm still on. Thank you, Mr. Chair. A brief introduction or some semblance of what we've been up to as a department doesn't necessarily reflect everything we're doing on a day-to-day basis. I'd be happy to field any questions about anything that's on the very brief development officer's report.
Any questions or concerns? Anybody have any burning desire to grill on? Seeing none, Mr. Grover, can I get you a receipt for information? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Short and sweet. Sway. Going on. Who's going to take the next one?
Mr. Chairman, I believe Rich will take us through the next development permit.
4. Caught him off guard.
Okay, so
Purpose of this application is to consider the permitted use permit for an ancillary building with a variance to allow it to be in the front yard. The applicant is proposing to place a 24-foot by 12-foot garage on skids in the front yard of lot 15 and 16, block 4, 8385T, 4904 49th Street in Botha. An ancillary building is permitted use in the Hamlet Residential District. However, Section 43.12 of the land use bylaw states, in a subdivision, a detached ancillary building or any portion thereof shall not be placed in the front yard. The applicant is also proposing to place the structure only 10 feet back from the front boundary line. The required setback for any structure from that boundary in the Hamlet Residential District of Botha is 19.7 feet. Land use bylaw also states that the development authority may decide on a development permit application even though the proposed development does not comply with this bylaw or is non-conforming in use. If in the opinion of the Municipal Planning Commission that development would not unduly interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood or materially interfere with or affect the use or enjoyment or value of neighboring parcels of the land. The proposed development will not bring the site coverage above the maximum allowed the Hamlet Botha over 50%. So if you go to the next page, you can see the photos. Not sure what page it is. Yeah, that one. So the site photos show that tarp shed is going to be removed, and that's where the skid shed will be placed. And it's to park a vehicle in there as well. It will meet up, and in the second picture, you see there's already 2 ancillary buildings there. So this will be built in alignment with those. So the development authority felt that it isn't going to pose any type of risk or interfere with the neighboring parcels at all. It will actually complement what's already existing there. So saying that, it is the development authority's recommendation that the proposed development meets the permitted use of an ancillary building in the Hamlet Residential District. The proposed location does not interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood or enjoyment or use of the neighbors. The setback, there's already buildings within that variance, so we feel the setback will be granted. Therefore, the Development Authority recommends that we approve application 22112 plat on lot 15 and 16, block 4, plan 8583T. Subject to the following conditions.
okay,
Move staff recommendations.
okay.
I just have one question. Are we at all concerned of being, the site plan, I'd almost be willing to give them a little bit more of a variance to separation of those buildings. Is there any concern of fire, like if one got on fire, there's always that concern that if you can't get in between them, maybe there is no concern, I don't.
I did forward the application to the fire chief, and I didn't get any concerns back from them.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns?
One.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Craig and then I'll.
Sorry, usually I don't get to ask questions, but if I could ask Rich maybe to clarify the 5 feet on the site plan versus the 10 feet.
Okay, so the applicant thought their property line was closer than it actually was. When we were out and did the site inspection, I had our data collector with us that survey grade accuracy, and I measured from where the property line actually is, where the pin is into the property, and it's actually 10 feet back.
Okay, and that puts him as a front facing, it keeps it all in line?
Right.
Okay, okay. Everybody's clear on that? Okay. And Mr. Stevens?
Did they indicate exterior finish of this skidded unit? Is it gonna match or similar aesthetic?
Yeah, it's one like they have for sale over by the other side, in that little parking lot that they have there, and it's gonna have the siding on it very similar to what their garage has.
You'd almost have
To put siding on there to get between those two buildings. Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
Very well kept property, very, pride in ownership on that property, so it will be matching, it will be kept up.
Excellent. Okay. Any questions, concerns? I'm seeing none. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Okay. Moving on. Going to subdivisions now, I guess, because we have 6.2 already done. Page 35 of our package, 7.1. Who's taking this one?
Will be me, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
So actually, Andrew, if we could just jump to the sketch showing what's going on with the nice orange.
Page 35 of your package, gentlemen. Actually, it would be page 32.
For this particular application, we're in some ways undoing some subdivision that occurred in the past. For whatever reason, the previous owner took 80 acres of the north quarter section and combined it with the full quarter section to the south, which largely gives you the orange dashed boundary that you're seeing. And out of that quarter section and a half, the kind of polygon or notch out on the west side was an approved parcel from 2022. So a new owner is now looking at reassembling the quarter section to the north to basically take that same 80 acres and re-add it to the 80 acres in the north quarter section, leaving around 140 acres or so in the south quarter section, with the one acreage, that large one in the middle, also being a separate parcel. So it was basically a very large redistribution of agricultural land and creation of new parcels, but technically does still need a subdivision approval because they use registered plans to create the new division. Staff do not have any serious concerns with the proposal that's before you. The one oddity that did come up is the access to the remainder parcel to the south. So that's the lower part shown on the picture. Big Knife Creek goes through the parcel, and on 17-1, if we could actually go to the next exhibit, I think we have a bit of a blow up that shows the access point. Originally, it was thought that access, you can see in the little insert on the left, was more on the property side of the balance of the parcel, which would have been its access, but it now seems to have been more likely part of the parcel that was taken out. So staff are recommending two ways to resolve this. Either the two property owners can bring an easement to an access easement to our satisfaction to register that, to share that existing access and approach, or there's sufficient space along 17-1 if you go south from that point, where the applicant could build a new agricultural approach in a safe location. That is probably the most exciting part of this particular application, other than the applicant waiting to get an outcome to move ahead. And I'd be happy to field any questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So my question is, okay, so we are looking on this piece of paper, 1, 2, 3, 4 parcels in a half section, and we're going to turn it to 3 parcels, or are we turning it to 2 parcels in a half section?
We're starting with 3, and we are going to finish with 3. So if you, Andrew, you can follow that outline. That's the original 80 acres in the hatch that was taken away the quarter section. It was added to the south quarter section. And And that same 80 acres now is, we're literally reversing it. Other than the fact that in between, we took another acreage out, which is the missing block in the middle, and putting that hashed 80 acres back to create the purple blocks in the north.
Okay, yeah, pretty simple then, I guess. It meets all the criteria. Any questions or concerns? Mr. Gender?
I believe on 17.1 that they're looking at having some road dedication there.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. It was taken for part of the parcel, but since it's coming back for subdivision, we are able to deal with whatever frontage was addressed previously. So there is a requirement for the, I'm going to say 5, it's not quite 5 meter widening to occur.
So that part will be onto the south quarter, that additional?
I believe that is correct.
So my question in there, I look at, say, like the roadway that's already there. It is kind of windy through there. So I'm not really sure what the contour of the land is going to be. Whether there's going to be an embankment, or is it going to follow, say, like the right of way in a straight line? Or is it going to follow the curvature of that road, the additional 5 meters?
Mr. Chair, the answer is neither. That stretch where the road becomes wavy is not part of the parcel that's subject to this application, in which case we can't require a road dedication for that. That would have been decided at the time that the acreage was being created.
And by the looks of it, there is if you zoom in a little bit, Mr. Gender, there's a black line in there that looks like the road dedication was done. We'd have to look back on that development, but I'm pretty sure we would have taken that little extra elbow out of there. Okay. Mr. Stevens, go ahead.
Just a question for clarification. Are we going to be using our new road use agreement or road dedication agreement?
Mr. Chair, that is the recommendation, yes. So this is the first candidate to get to try out that tool.
Mr. Gender.
So are there any surveying costs, like to redistribute this piece of parcel?
Unfortunately, yeah, to undo a plan of survey, you have to use another plan of survey. So the applicant will have to get a surveyor to come in. Now, I'm not sure, they may be able to do this by description, which is that slightly less expensive plan. But yes, they definitely have to still hire the surveyor and prepare a plan and register it with land titles.
And that's not on ours, that's on the applicants. Okay. Mr. McKay?
I'll move that we accept it with staff recommendations.
Okay. Any questions or concerns? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, excellent. Next on.
That's okay. You get all.
So we've done 7.2, 7.3, page 62. This one?
Will be me again, Mr. Chair. So this one, I want to point out, Warren Mark Jones is the landowner. Technically, the county is the applicant. We are the beneficial owner courtesy of a signed purchase agreement. That purchase agreement means the county has the authority to act as the applicant and is responsible for going through the process of getting the 4-acre parcel that we're purchasing from Mr. Jones completely subdivided and registered at title. And that's how you end up seeing my name listed as the agent or the applicant in the county's name there. This subdivision application is also relatively straightforward, and the intent is to take a first parcel out of the quarter section. You can see that in the purple box in the lower right around our existing gravel stockpile / gravel pit. Unfortunately, at the time of submitting the report, we didn't have the comments in from Alberta Transportation, so I'm going to ask Andrew to quickly pop those up on the screen because you didn't have the advantages of seeing those in your package. Alberta Transportation has indicated they are comfortable with the county choosing to grant a relaxation or a waiver of the subdivision and development regulations that would require a service road or other access satisfactory to Alberta Transportation. They do, of course, note that at a future date, if things change on this highway, we may be asked to remove the access directly on the highway in favor of using the one on the range road to the east. There is a driveway there. It's a 4-foot drop straight in. That'll have to be changed. But there's also no timeline on how long or if that eventuality will come. So you can see up on the screen that what not sure, I think there's a fourth one there as well, Andrew, if you could fit it on the screen, are becoming fairly standard responses back from AT, saying we're on our own for noise. We're on our own for any land use conflict. We should get a roadside development permit, and that any access onto a highway from their perspective as the approving authority is temporary. But beyond that, they're quite comfortable with us approving the subdivision, which is important. We're not able to go on and approve the subdivision without AT sign off, and effectively this letter gives us that. So with that, Mr. Chair, the recommendations are for approval of the application with a small number of conditions. They would apply to any other applicant, just as they are applied to the county, with the minor exception that, sorry, my mistake, I was going to say we didn't put it in, but we did put in the taxes because it is still in private ownership, and we do have to check that, so it's not county-owned land as of yet.
Okay, Mr. Stoller?
Yeah, I would like to move this forward for subdivision as per county recommendations and conditions.
Any questions, concerns? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? It's carried. Make sure you make that applicant pay through the. Oh, Greg's not writing us the check for them?
In all fairness, that would be the current owner making sure that their taxes are, I'm confident.
Well, I'm talking
Most
about
likely.
the application.
The applicant's a real pain for this one, yes.
All right.
If I just may add, even though it's after the fact, but I've talked to some of the landowners around it because they were wondering why they were getting the letter. And they assumed the county owned it all along. They didn't realize it was a rental, and they were totally cool with the county owning the site, so they didn't hear any complaints.
They would prefer us owning it than paying rent in perpetuity.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, moving on. So new business, March meeting dates.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So it turns out our regularly scheduled March MBC would fall during the week of RMA. And we were looking for a motion to move it up a week to March 15th.
That gives you enough time to get everything prepared. We will be sitting February 22nd, correct?
At this stage, I think we are. We do have enough development permits in the works to warrant at least a brief meeting.
You're good with that? Okay. Mr. Stolberg.
I'll make the motion that we move our March meeting forward to the 15th
Of
March.
Any question or concern? All those in favor? That's carried. Okay. Ducks Unlimited, page 74.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to excuse myself.
Okay. Who's taking this one? Craig?
That will be me, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So a referral from Ducks Unlimited, actually a referral and also a request. So Ducks Unlimited has negotiated a conservation easement with the owner of the quarter section. The conservation easement covers all of the quarter section with the exception of a 5-acre area, leaving space to possibly have the first parcel out at a later date. This quarter section has not previously been subdivided. It is located in the Buffalo Lake IDP area, but it's also not within the growth node. It's within the limited growth area under that plan. And the policies in that plan basically say leave it as an agricultural area as currently designated, but that does allow up to the first and second parcels out to be taken. So the landowner here is making provision for it, where you see that hatched box on the screen for one potential 5-acre parcel later on. They would have to then come forward and get subdivision approval, of course, but no provision for a second parcel, which may be their choice. This really is a negotiation between Ducks Unlimited and the landowner. The landowner is willingly putting these restrictions on their title. The purpose of the 60-day waiver that Ducks Unlimited is asking for the county to reduce is in a scenario where someone has signed something in maybe one of our future growth areas, and we feel they may not have acted on the best interests of the development of that area in the future to achieve the county's own needs or their ability to develop their land as a landowner. And that 60-day window would be an opportunity to get in touch with them and let them know and see if they want to reverse course on signing the conservation easement. But when push really comes to shove on day 61, this is between the landowner and Ducks Unlimited. So the formal request from Ducks Unlimited, Mr. Chair, is if the county's willing to waive the remainder of the 60-day period, which would allow, depending on how quickly land titles is moving, theoretically, a faster registration of the easement at land titles and payment to the landowner.
Questions, concerns, Mr. Silver?
Just a question for clarification. So, allowing for future, a future parcel out is unique to each application, basically?
You know, I'm not that familiar with them. I'm assuming, I'm not sure if this is something we could expect, or this something a savvy enough landowner put the question to Ducks Unlimited, or it went the other way that Ducks Unlimited suggested it to them. I think it is prudent to leave open that kind of, I would say, standard subdivision approval that we see across most quarter sections, and not have it blocked by a easement document. And even if the easement document is in place and they want to create a second parcel, that's not the end of the story. It just means they'd have to do extra steps and get Ducks Unlimited to sign off on a modification of the easement agreement.
That was the concern I had. It does sort of sterilize a lot of land against future development for acreages if it gets too difficult. And so I think it's an excellent piece to have in there where they can have an acreage or two. So I'm glad to see it.
Mr.
My question with this, the 5-acre parcel is a hypothetical in the future. My question is, why did they determine that location? Because the way it's drawn now, you would fragment and make that bottom corner inaccessible.
The way I understand this, and correct me if I'm wrong, they basically, the agreement with Ducks Unlimited, somewhere on this quarter, they can put a 5-acre parcel. I don't think it'll be surveyed out at this point in time. It's just basically, they're saying there is 160 acres and we're going to take 155 as conservatory.
Mr. Chair, in this particular case, very specifically, it's hatched out there on that drawing, which is part of the easement.
So they're going to survey it?
They would, at this point, they're not coming forward for a subdivision application. They've theoretically created a box and have agreed to, with Ducks Unlimited, that the maintenance of the habitat would not apply to that 5-acre box. Going to the fragmentation
But that's their decision between them, not us.
It is, and quite frankly, when we look at the subdivision approval, that'll be a decision independent of the conservation easement. We will look at the county's policies, land use bylaw, and whatever makes sense for planning. And if that means that the applicant has to slightly adjust that box, that's just one more step that they have to go through.
Between them and Ducks Unlimited.
In terms of the fragmentation, I'm not sure I'd be concerned about this on this one, given that it's not really cropland, that it's pasture land, which does give you a lot more access to get in around that area in the lower left corner shown in the drawing.
Mr. Grover.
Maybe pasture land will be worth more than farmland someday. But that's my aim, my dream. So the timeline, we're going to shorten the timeline for Ducks Unlimited?
That is what's proposed in front of us, yes.
Okay. We should treat every ratepayer in the county Stettler the same. Thank you.
Mr. Clark.
I know on these lands in the past where they've been taking these agreements, a question was on potential residents on any spot there. I'm glad to see it on this one. I almost wish we could look at our land use bylaw, that if they were to come forward, that it had to do that, because it ties land up where nobody can live and can't tax residences, and we don't have kids going to our schools, et cetera. So I'm glad to see it on this one.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns? I'll need a motion to go forward with allowing this applicant, or telling the county to waive this 60-day, or allowing the county a 60-day wait.
I will give you that motion that we waive the 60-day waiting period. It seems to me that it's a formality that's happening one way or the other. We're just moving the time.
Just for clarification, do you see, Craig, any, I guess it should be done on a case-by-case basis, but any conflict coming forward with this? Anything that pops up in your mind that we should be worried about?
No, Mr. Chair, especially since we also have a policy plan in place, the Buffalo Lake IDP, that puts restrictions on this. So we know it's not a future growth area of beyond potentially up to 2 parcels for residential.
Mr. Clark?
Was the sewage issue talked to, like, that 5 acres that can you get a pump out system in that 5 acres?
You will not. So that, Mr. Chair, that is certainly another ramification for this landowner. The option of using an open discharge, which needs at least 8 to 10 acres of land, that door is being closed. So you have to use another one of the private sewage treatment facility solutions. It could be a treatment mound if the soil conditions are conducive to that. It could be infield if conducive. Worst case scenario, congratulations, it's a holding tank and you're paying for it to be trucked.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, but I just wonder if the landowners were,
I think this landowner has done a number of subdivisions within the last 2 years, so I think they're fairly familiar with our rules and regulations. But good, definitely a good question, Dan. Any other questions or concerns? I'll ask the question then. All those in favor? All those opposed? So opposed is Mr. McKay and Mr. Grover. In favor, Mr. Clark, Mr. Stevens, Mr. Stolberg, and Mr. Niver. Got that? Somebody go wrangle up Mr. Gender. Okay. Well, they're getting Mr. Gender in place. Moving on to the next one. 8 point, I gotta move back, sorry. Town of Stettler, 8.3. Page 96 of your package, gentlemen. Who's taking this one?
That'll be me again. Andrew, we might as well just jump to the first sketch if you wouldn't mind. I'll see with some scaling issues. So this is actually pretty close to us in terms of property ones. You probably drive by it a lot. So it is the first phase of the Wellings subdivision proposal. And internally what they're creating is a public road with most likely what will be condominium lots wrapped around. So that's where you see part of lot 11 in 2 parts with a local road separating it. And the other blocks of land, I'm assuming, correspond to a overall site plan for the gradual phasing and development of that project. The referral has been sent to us because it falls under the IDP referral area. And in assessing it, I don't believe we have any concerns in terms of its potential impact on county planning exercises. The one large one I was concerned about in checking was any constriction of the floodway for the small branch of Red Willow Creek that goes over to Carlisle Estates in terms of any potential backwatering or flooding upstream, which is county land, if the floodway was not being suitably protected. So if Andrew could go to the next screen. This is a diagram of the same quarter section in the upper right. And in the dark kind of pink area, that is the floodway, and in there would also be the channel of that branch of the Red Willow Creek. And then you see radi going out from that, the yellow hatched area, which is the flood fringe. And by the time you get to that outer yellow, that combined is what we would call the flood hazard area. So the flood hazard area is theoretically in a 1 in 100 year flood or 1% chance flood. How much water that Red Willow Creek may fill in, with the more critical part being the purple area in terms of being able to convey water. But water could spill shallower and not moving quite as fast into the hatched area. That's why we call that the flood fringe. You can do development in flood fringes, but it has to be properly done. And in projections to create the floodway, this document has assumed that the flood fringe has already been filled in, which actually gives me a greater sense of comfort about whether or not we would have any damming effect or backwatering effect further upstream towards Carlisle Estates. Just to get your bearings, roughly, it's hard to see through the air photo because it's gray. Just parallel to the north side of the purple blob, you'll see there's a kind of a tree line. And on the previous file, there was a boundary for a municipal reserve parcel. That boundary largely follows that tree line through there. So the town has already acquired the floodway as public land to manage it. And as they go through the subdivision and development permit, it will fall to them to look at any other floodproofing requirements. It's not a county concern per se. The issue was whether or not we would have any upstream influences, and I don't envision that being the problem. So with that, Mr. Chair, the recommendation from this administration is to formally communicate in written letter back to the town that the county does not have any concerns with the subdivision referral.
Any questions, concerns that anybody has screaming? If not, can I get a motion to send the town a letter of referral? Mr. Gender? Okay.
One question. Is it,
So just
by the skin of my teeth, is it fair to inquire to the town whether this development will be subject to the levy that our developments were subject to for
Water and sewer?
extensions?
We certainly could add that letter as an inquiry, or add that to our letter, if there's a desire.
Mr. Gender, are you in favor of that? Please. That friendly amendment? Okay, so we'll send a letter with asking that we don't have any problems, just in one inquiry, that is this going to be subject to the levy? Okay. I'm seeing noddings ahead, then I'll ask the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Okay, next up. Page 100, again, the town of Stettler.
Mr. Chairman, so in this particular case, we're actually nowhere near the county boundary. So this is well into the downtown area and is basically an infill subdivision to take 3 parcels and create them to be 5 narrower parcels. There is no guidance in the IDP on this, so it would fall under the county's, or sorry, the town's municipal development plan, but it's also not adjacent, or it's not likely to have any impact on the county's own planning efforts. Therefore, we recommend the communication back to the town of Stettler be that the county has no concerns with this proposed subdivision.
I'll make that motion that we respond to the town of Stettler saying that we have no concerns with this.
Okay. No questions, concerns? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Excellent. Excellent, excellent. Okay, now we're all the way back to, I think in camera now. Oh no, 8.5, you give us an addition. 8.5, go ahead, Mr. Teal.
Good, Mr. Chair. So fairly or not, you recently received an email from me about the referral from Flagstaff County on their land use bylaw. And unfortunately, given the timelines, I was not able to get it onto, read it, much less get it on MPC agenda with any advice and guidance to you. The deadline, unfortunately, for comments back is the same day as your next council meeting. So not a lot of opportunity for group discussion on that. But I'd ask Mr. Chair is maybe a couple days before February 8th, if anyone has any comments or observations they would like me to put in a letter over to the consultant working on the LUB review on behalf of Flagstaff County, just please email those to me and I will pass those forward. Generally speaking, I don't expect we're going to find a lot of issues of concern if you choose to read the 197-page document. The Battle River does separate us and Flagstaff County, but that is also defines our entire boundary. At this stage, it's hard to guess what may happen on their side of the riverbank. Usually, though, when we share that boundary, it's adjacent and abutting. We may not have a formal IDP. I think we got a pass for that one from the minister, but that doesn't mean that they wouldn't refer applications over to us if they're within that, say, 1 mile distance. And likewise, we're expected to do the same for them if we are dealing with interesting and significant rezonings, new plans, or even discretionary use permits. So if I don't hear from anyone, I guess, but I hate setting up negative communication, but that may work in this case. I'll assume we don't have any concerns or comments.
So I didn't go through the whole thing, just a general skim. It's very much a cookie cutter. There's not anything exciting and new that stuck out to me. Is there any concerns with us doing that going forward? Okay.
By what date though?
Let me see, February 8th is Wednesday, so if you can get it to me by, say, the February 6th, that way if any other questions from you, I can have at least a day to get hold of you.
It gives Craig the opportunity to answer your question. It might just be, you would like to know more about the plan, and Craig can take care of that. Go ahead, Mr. Gender.
I believe this would be much along the same line as what we had with the county of Red Deer, was it not? Being like with the river dividing it.
Yes, yeah, got to think about our boundary. That same idea, just a little longer.
Thank you.
I think we have one little piece of corner up in that area that is on this side of the river, but it's still Flagstaff's area, and it's just like a little corner. Yeah, might even be not even quite a quarter section, but it's a funny way to deal with it. Okay. Any questions, concerns? Can I get a motion then to receive this for information with instructions to by February 6th? Any questions, concerns? We've got Mr. McKay on that.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you don't hear from us, that is
A polite letter saying thank you for the opportunity we have.
okay. All those in favor? That's carried. Excellent. Any old business that is arising? None that I'm seeing. I will have us go into camera at 1:55. Mr. Clark, all those in favor? That's carried. Next meeting is February the 27th. Is that what I got? 3rd? 20.
Should be on the agenda.
I don't have the agenda.
To close my, can you just scroll down?
February 22nd. Everybody knows that?
Sure enjoyed the camera session.
Justin?
Motion for adjournment.
All those in favor? We're out of here. Thank you.